The clock struck 8:42 a.m. when Kendrick Robinson pulled his car into the parking lot outside the municipal courthouse in Greenville, South Carolina. The golden rays of morning sunlight stretched long shadows across the asphalt. As he stepped out of the car, he let out a deep breath. Kendrick, a federal prosecutor known for his discipline and order, hated running late. This day was not supposed to be stressful. His task was relatively simple: challenge a mistake in the property tax adjustment on the house his grandmother had left him. The city had mysteriously raised the taxes, and Kendrick had spent weeks gathering proof that the adjustment was wrong. That house was not just real estate, it was the home where he had grown up, guided by his grandmother's steady hand, learning right from wrong within those walls. Dressed sharply in a dark navy suit and crisp white shirt, Kendrick looked every inch the seasoned attorney. But his morning had been derailed by an urgent phone call. A major human trafficking case he was prosecuting had taken a sudden turn after the defense filed a last-minute motion. Kendrick couldn't ignore it. He reviewed the documents, coordinated with his team, and only then rushed to the courthouse, cutting time dangerously close. As he approached the courthouse steps, his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant flashed on the screen. The judge in Greenville is notoriously strict about tardiness. Kendrick sighed and tucked the phone away. He trusted his preparation. Facts were his shield and evidence his sword. Yet something about that message lingered in his mind. Inside, the municipal courthouse looked nothing like the federal courts where he usually worked. The walls were painted a tired beige, the wooden seats scuffed from years of use, and the air smelled faintly of stale coffee and aging paper. Despite the worn atmosphere, the building hummed with activity. People clutched folders and documents, their faces etched with stress over traffic tickets, minor disputes, or zoning issues. Kendrick checked his watch, 8:50 a.m., just 10 minutes to find his courtroom. He followed the signs until he reached room 204. On the door, a brass plate read, "Judge Charles Whitman." Straightening his tie, Kendrick entered. The courtroom was already half full, buzzing with quiet conversation. Taking a seat in the back, he opened his folder and skimmed through the carefully arranged documents. Moments later, the judge entered. Judge Charles Whitman, tall with a mane of silver hair and piercing blue eyes, radiated authority without uttering a word. His reputation as no-nonsense was apparent in the sharp way his eyes scanned the room. "All rise," the bailiff called. The room shuffled to its feet. Kendrick joined, posture straight. The judge settled into his chair, and silence followed. Case after case was called with mechanical precision. As Kendrick watched, a man in a business suit slipped in late, unnoticed by the judge. A young woman wandered in minutes later, casually taking her seat. Neither drew a reaction. Kendrick noticed, but said nothing, focusing instead on his evidence. At 9:15 a.m., his name echoed in the courtroom: Kendrick Robinson. Gathering his folder, he strode to the podium, calm despite his slight delay. But as soon as Judge Whitman looked up, the atmosphere shifted. "You're late, Mr. Robinson," the judge said sharply, his voice cutting through the room. "Do you think this court's time is less valuable than your own?" Kendrick raised his hand slightly in acknowledgement. "Your Honor, I apologize. I was attending to urgent federal matters." The judge cut him off. "Excuses don't excuse tardiness. This court demands order and respect. You are fined $750. The words fell like a hammer. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Kendrick's jaw tightened, but his expression remained calm. "Your Honor, may I explain?" "You may not," Judge Whitman snapped, raising his gavel. "Consider this a lesson in respecting this court." Kendrick stepped back, mind racing. He couldn't ignore what he had just witnessed. Other people had walked in late, unscathed, yet he alone was punished. The disparity was glaring. When called again, Kendrick presented his evidence. Detailed documents showing the tax assessment on his grandmother's property had suddenly spiked by 30% without justification. He laid everything out with calm precision, but Judge Whitman seemed disinterested. Instead, the judge returned to the issue of tardiness. "Mr. Robinson, noble or not, your federal duties do not excuse disrespect for this court." Kendrick took a slow breath. His voice stayed even. "Your Honor, I respect the rules, but may I ask, are these rules applied equally to everyone here?" The question sent ripples through the room. The judge stiffened. "Are you questioning this court's integrity, Mr. Robinson?" "I'm asking for clarity," Kendrick replied. "Fairness must be applied equally, for everyone." The gavel slammed. "Your fine stands. This matter is closed." The tension was thick. Kendrick returned to his seat, discreetly jotting notes. This wasn't just about a fine anymore. It was about something larger. The courtroom buzzed with unspoken awareness. Some admired his courage. Others looked uneasy. When the session ended, Kendrick lingered. He noticed quiet glances from spectators. A law student scribbling furiously in her notebook, an older black man offering him a knowing nod, the court clerk shifting nervously at her desk. The disparity had not gone unnoticed. Outside, the crisp air did little to ease his mind. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something bigger. Later, Kendrick returned to the courtroom carrying his badge. When the judge tried to dismiss him, he introduced himself formally. "I am Kendrick Robinson, Assistant United States Attorney, Northern District of South Carolina." The judge froze. The room hushed. Kendrick continued, steady but firm. "I was late because of a human trafficking case, but I also witnessed unequal treatment this morning. Some latecomers were ignored. I alone was fined." His words landed heavily. The judge bristled but faltered under the weight of scrutiny. "If you believe there was misconduct, file a complaint," he said stiffly. "I already began documenting everything," Kendrick replied, holding up his notes. "As a federal prosecutor, I'm obligated to report patterns of bias or discrimination." The judge shifted uneasily, his authority shaken. Kendrick gathered his things, adding one last statement. "Justice must be applied equally, Your Honor, always." News of the confrontation spread quickly. A law student who had witnessed it posted the details online. Within hours, the story went viral, sparking outrage and countless testimonies of similar experiences. Headlines blared, "Bias in Greenville Courtroom. Federal Prosecutor Speaks Out." Investigators launched a formal inquiry. Court staff, including Mrs. Thompson, the clerk, handed over years of private notes documenting unfair treatment. James Wilson, the longtime bailiff, confessed he had seen disparities for years. Defendants came forward with stories: higher fines for black defendants, harsher interruptions, dismissive treatment. The evidence was overwhelming. Statistics revealed black defendants in Judge Whitman's courtroom had been fined 3 times more than white defendants for identical infractions. Public protests erupted outside the courthouse. Signs read, "Justice should be blind," and "End bias now." Under mounting pressure, Judge Whitman resigned. His statement of regret for unintentional harm rang hollow against the evidence of systemic bias. For Kendrick, it wasn't victory, it was responsibility. He worked closely with oversight committees, pushing for reforms, mandatory bias training for judges, audits of court decisions, and independent review boards. The changes spread. Within months, the courthouse in Greenville looked different. New staff policies promoted fairness. A young, impartial judge replaced Whitman. Signs in multiple languages guided visitors. A plaque near the entrance read, "Equal justice is everyone's right." Kendrick became a voice for reform, speaking at law schools, conferences, and community forums. His story inspired young lawyers to see themselves as defenders of justice. Law students formed civil rights clinics in his honor. Even James Wilson, the bailiff, began leading training for new officers. Our job isn't just order, it's dignity for every person who walks through these doors. Mrs. Thompson was promoted to lead ethical practice programs for clerks. The movement grew beyond Greenville. Across the state, and eventually the country, other municipal courts faced reviews. Data revealed real improvements. Racial disparities in fines dropped significantly. More defendants gained access to payment plans, and respect inside courtrooms improved. Months later, Kendrick returned to the very courthouse where it had all begun. A new judicial ethics center was being unveiled, dedicated in part to his efforts. Standing at the podium, he addressed the audience. "Justice isn't only about laws," he said. "It's about people. It's about fairness, dignity, and respect. Every person who walks into a courtroom must know that they matter. The applause was thunderous, but for Kendrick, the true reward was seeing hope in the eyes of the crowd. What started as a simple property tax dispute had sparked a movement toward equality, one that would echo far beyond Greenville.